By the end of this video, you should be able to demonstrate knowledge of the Louisiana Purchase and the Lewis and Clark Expedition. Much of this we've gone over in class, but even though it's a review, you're going to want to make sure and learn this material and study it for the quiz and the test at the end of the unit. So here we have a map of the United States. This that we see here in white is the United States in 1803. Here's St. Louis on the Mississippi River. Who would benefit the most from the purchase of New Orleans, which is down here? And hopefully you know that farmers and merchants all along the Mississippi River would greatly benefit if New Orleans was part of the United States, because they could use this port to sell their goods. So Jefferson ends up purchasing the Louisiana Territory. The borders in the east are the Mississippi River all the way to the Rocky Mountains in the west. The American ambassador got a surprising offer during his negotiations with French Foreign Minister Charles Talleyrand. When the Americans tried to buy New Orleans, Talleyrand offered to sell all of Louisiana. The news pleased President Jefferson, but as a strict constructionist, he was troubled. The Constitution did not mention the purchase of foreign lands. Why might Jefferson be troubled by this? Well, the words of the Constitution did not specifically say a president could do this. It doesn't say anywhere in the Constitution that the president can take money from the American people and buy land with it. So Jefferson was troubled. He didn't know if he should do it or not. So why did he buy the Louisiana Territory? And Jefferson believed the benefits from the purchase required a quick decision. The deal was just too good. So he violated the Constitution, purchased the Louisiana Territory, which of course now we know it's a good thing that he did because he doubled the size of the country. The major impact of the Louisiana Purchase, obviously it had a huge impact. It nearly doubled the size of the country. It helped the United States challenge British power in North America. Now that we were twice the size that we were before, we don't need to worry about Great Britain challenging us in North America. And it set an example purchasing territory without approval from Congress. So Jefferson purchased the Louisiana Territory without the approval of Congress, who are the representatives of the people. So if we look at this headline, this is a fictitious headline, U.S. News and World Report, Jefferson's action expands the power of the president. We're talking about the Louisiana Purchase. Okay, he expands the power of the president by buying all this territory. Now, after Jefferson bought the territory, he needed to find out what was out there. So he gets in touch with Meriwether Lewis. And hopefully in class, you remember going over the letter that Jefferson sent to Lewis about exploring the West. Then Meriwether Lewis gets in touch with William Clark, who is his co-captain, and they, with a group of men and one woman, Sacagawea, head off to explore the West. And that group was called the Corps of Discovery. Sacagawea here, the female, then Lewis and Clark, and of course York was the one African American who was part of the Corps of Discovery. And they were looking ideally for a way to sail from the Mississippi River all the way to the Pacific Ocean, a water route that started at the Mississippi and went across the entire continent all the way to the Pacific. That was their goal. And then, of course, hopefully we remember from the letter that Jefferson wanted Lewis and Clark to take notes on everything they saw, on all the wildlife, all the geography, and on the Native Americans they met. So when the Corps of Discovery went out west, what did they find? Well, they found many, many things, but just a few of the things, Native Americans all along the way, most of which were very peaceful. And the Corps of Discovery had a very peaceful and calm interactions, even mutually beneficial interactions with the Native Americans. Unfortunately, there were diseases like smallpox and rough weather, drought, no water, starvation, injuries. It was a very difficult journey. And of course, they also saw thousands, millions of buffalo in the Great Plains, this gigantic animal the size of a large bull that covered the Midwest. And the Indians used the buffalo for food and for clothing and for tools. Just in the Louisiana Territory, this is before they got past the Rocky Mountains, they found oil for expanding the economy. People needed oil for fuel for lamps. Fertile farmland to grow crops for the growing nation. The country's getting bigger, and they needed farmland that could grow crops enough to feed the new country. Precious metals like silver and gold for wealth. All of these are found just in Louisiana Territory alone. And then lastly, coal, of course, which is a power source and is eventually going to be used to power locomotives and trains across the United States. Now, there was one member of the Corps of Discovery that was a little different than the other ones, and that was the African American known as York. And he was William Clark's slave, but he was treated pretty much as an equal on the Corps of Discovery. And one benefit of having York with them is that he could ease tensions between the Corps of Discovery and the Native Americans. And part of that was because he had a similar skin tone as the Native Americans. Both are dark complected, whereas Lewis and Clark were fair complected. And when the Native Americans saw someone that had a similar skin tone as them, it put them at ease. And that was one of the many benefits of bringing York along. Now, the next few slides, I'm going to show you some information that you really don't need to memorize for any quiz or test, although it will help you greatly in your scrapbook project. Pretty much everything before this point in the video you will need to know for your quiz. The information after this point is not required for the quiz, but I would suggest hitting pause on each of the slides and reading through them. I'm not going to read them on this recording, but you can pause the video, take a look at them, take some notes, and I encourage you to incorporate this information into your scrapbook project. This is interesting. Why did Napoleon sell the Louisiana Territory? He said, "I have given England a rival who sooner or later will humble her pride." So Great Britain has always been very self-confident. And Napoleon, who was at war with Great Britain, knew that by selling the Louisiana Territory, he gave the United States a lot of power, who will eventually rival England. Here's the total days and miles. It's really incredible when you think they walked most of the way. The total approved by Congress, $2,500, grew to $38,722, 15 times what they had originally allotted. The permanent Corps of Discovery consisted of 33 to 35 people, including, of course, the woman was Sacagawea, the Native American, one baby and one dog. Mosquitoes were a terrible problem on the Corps of Discovery. keel boats. Many of you have examples of these in your scrapbook. This is an interesting little fact. If you're not sure what a laxative is, ask your mom or dad. They had to keep their health up. Had to keep their weight up so they didn't get too thin, too weak. 9 pounds of meat per day. Game animals killed on the expedition. And you can take a look at these numbers. You can see dog actually became a big part of their diet. 190 Indian dogs, mostly for food. Horses as well. And this list doesn't include the smaller game. Okay, now I'm going to show you some excerpts from the Corps of Discovery journals, and you can read these on your own, and you can hit pause at any time, and I encourage you to take this information and again put it in your scrapbook entries. And yes, one of the Corps of Discovery members shot Meriwether Lewis in the butt. He thought it was an elk, which is a large deer, took a shot, hit him in the backside. The next part of this unit we'll be examining is the actual settling of the West. Hopefully you now have a good understanding of the exploration of the West, Lewis and Clark and the Corps of Discovery. And the next part, again, of this unit is when people start moving out west. When we say west, we're talking about west of the Mississippi, all the way to the Pacific Ocean. And that's what's up next. So hopefully you've taken some good notes. If you have any questions, as usual, please see me.